Everyone in the house was asleep when it happened. The world outside was quiet, wrapped in the soft hum of crickets and distant waves rolling onto the shore. Inside, behind closed doors and dim hallway lights, silence covered everything like a blanket. But in one small room at the end of the hall, a grown man sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor, trying not to fall apart. And that's when she whispered, "You don't have to pretend." Before we begin, if stories about real-life kindness and second chances touch your heart, make sure you subscribe to your channel name, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us spread more stories that remind the world that kindness still matters. Now let me tell you what happened that night. Daniel Harper was the kind of man everyone admired. He lived in a small coastal town in South Carolina, in a white wooden house just steps from the beach. Palm trees swayed in the salty breeze, and tourists often walked past his porch, smiling at the peaceful view. From the outside, his life looked perfect. He had a steady job managing a local hardware store. He coached Little League baseball on weekends. He paid his bills on time. He waved at neighbors. He showed up when someone needed help moving a couch or fixing a fence. Daniel was dependable. But Daniel was also exhausted. What no one saw was the weight he carried. 2 years earlier, his father had passed away suddenly. 6 months after that, his marriage quietly fell apart. He and his wife agreed to separate amicably, as they told friends. But the truth was, the grief and the silence between them had grown too wide to cross. So Daniel did what he thought he was supposed to do. He kept going. He smiled at work. He joked with customers. He told his players to shake it off when they lost a game. He told everyone he was fine. But every night, when the house grew quiet, the pretending became harder. His daughter, Lily, was the only one who lived with him now. She was 12 years old, with long sandy hair and thoughtful eyes that seemed older than her years. She spent half the week with her mom and half with Daniel. On the nights she was there, the house felt less empty. That particular night, Lily had gone to bed early. She had a school presentation in the morning. Daniel had helped her practice, clapping and telling her she'd do great. Then he'd poured himself a glass of water, turned off the living room lights, and walked to his bedroom. But instead of sleeping, he sat on the edge of the bed. He stared at the framed photo on his nightstand, him, Lily, and his ex-wife at the beach years ago, all sunburned and laughing. He picked it up and felt his chest tighten. He tried to breathe through it. "You're fine," he whispered to himself. "Other people have it worse." That was his favorite line. "Other people have it worse." He repeated it like a shield. But that night, the shield cracked. His shoulders started to shake. The tears came fast and heavy. He covered his face with his hands, trying to stay quiet. The last thing he wanted was for Lily to hear him. He was her dad. He was supposed to be strong. He didn't hear the soft footsteps in the hallway. He didn't notice the slight creak of his bedroom door opening. He only felt a small hand on his arm. He looked up, startled, his face wet and red. Lily stood there in her pajamas, her hair messy from sleep. She didn't look scared. She didn't look confused. She looked sad. "Daddy," she said softly. Daniel quickly wiped his face and forced a smile. "Hey, Peanut. Bad dream?" She shook her head. There was a long pause. The kind where the truth hangs in the air, waiting. Then she walked closer, climbed onto the bed beside him, and wrapped her thin arms around his waist. "You don't have to pretend," she whispered. The words were so quiet, but they hit him harder than anything else ever had. He froze. "I see you," she continued. "I know you're sad sometimes. I hear you at night." Daniel felt his heart drop. "Lily, I'm okay. I just..." She pulled back and looked at him, her eyes shining. It's okay if you're not. No one had said that to him. Not his friends. Not his coworkers. Not even himself. It's okay if you're not. He let out a shaky breath. I'm supposed to be strong for you. You are strong, she said. But strong people cry too. In that moment, something shifted. Daniel stopped trying to hold it in. He let himself cry in front of his daughter. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just honest. And Lily held him. A 12-year-old girl holding her grown father together with nothing but kindness. They sat there for a long time. The house was still quiet. The ocean kept moving outside, steady and calm. I miss Grandpa too, Lily said after a while. Daniel swallowed. You do? She nodded. I just didn't want to make you more sad. He looked at her, realizing how much she had been carrying too. They had both been pretending. Pretending to be okay so the other wouldn't hurt. And in trying to protect each other, they had built a wall of silence between them. That night, they started tearing it down. They talked about Grandpa's silly jokes. They talked about how weird it felt not having Mom there every day. They talked about the loneliness that sometimes crept in, even when the sun was shining. There were tears. But there was also laughter. And something else. Relief. When Lily finally went back to bed, Daniel didn't feel empty. He felt lighter. The next morning, the house felt different. Not magically fixed. Not perfect. But real. At breakfast, Daniel told Lily he was proud of her for speaking up. She shrugged shyly and said, I just didn't want you to feel alone. Her words echoed in his mind all day at work. I just didn't want you to feel alone. That afternoon, when one of his employees, Marcus, dropped a box and muttered, Sorry, I'm just off today, Daniel didn't brush it aside like usual. Instead, he said, You want to talk about it? Marcus hesitated. Then he did. His mom had been diagnosed with cancer. He hadn't told anyone. He was trying to keep it together. Daniel felt a familiar ache in his chest. But this time, he didn't hide it. I know that feeling, he said quietly. You don't have to pretend here. Marcus looked at him, surprised. They stood in the aisle between paint cans and light bulbs, two grown men having a real conversation in the middle of a workday. And something powerful happened. Kindness moved forward. It didn't come with grand gestures. It didn't require money or big speeches. It started with a whisper in the middle of the night. Over the next few weeks, Daniel made small changes. He started a monthly, community coffee, at the store, inviting anyone who wanted to come by and just talk. No sales pitch. No agenda. At first, only a few people showed up. An older widow who missed her husband. A young dad overwhelmed with a newborn. A high school senior anxious about college. Daniel didn't have perfect advice. But he listened. And sometimes, when the moment felt right, he repeated the words that changed him. You don't have to pretend. The gatherings grew. People brought homemade cookies. Someone brought a guitar one afternoon. Laughter mixed with stories of loss, stress, and hope. Daniel realized something simple but profound. Most people weren't asking to be fixed. They just didn't want to feel alone. And kindness, real kindness, wasn't about solving someone's problems. It was about sitting beside them in the dark and saying, I see you. One evening, months later, Daniel and Lily sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Dad? Lily said. Yeah. You seem happier. He smiled. I think I am. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm glad you stopped pretending. He kissed the top of her head. Me too. The ocean kept rolling in, steady as ever. Life didn't become perfect. There were still hard days. There were still nights when grief knocked at the door. But now, Daniel didn't face them alone. He had learned something from a 12-year-old girl brave enough to speak the truth in a whisper. Kindness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a small voice in the dark. Sometimes it's a hand on your arm when you're trying not to cry. Sometimes it's giving someone permission to be human. In a world where everyone feels pressure to look strong, successful, and unshaken, the most powerful thing we can say might be this. You don't have to pretend. Tonight, someone you know might be sitting on the edge of their bed, trying to hold it together. A friend. A coworker. A neighbor. Maybe even you. What if one gentle question could change everything? What if one moment of courage could start a ripple that spreads further than you'll ever see? Kindness doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. So let's be the kind of people who notice. The kind who ask. The kind who listen. Let's be the whisper in someone's darkness. Because when we stop pretending, we make room for healing. And when we choose kindness, even in the quietest ways, we remind each other of something we all need to hear. You are not alone.